really happy to be back here at the American Hotel. It's been a few months for our Express Sessions event. Here comes the Sag Harbor Cinema. It was almost 3 years ago that we were actually sitting right here in this room. We had our Express holiday party, and it was December 16th, actually. And that was the day that the fire struck Main Street, and kind of a really strange evening for all of us. I think April, I think you were sitting in the room too that night. But it's incredible how much has happened since then. That night, Ned Hinkle, who's also here with us, Michael Heller, and my wife walked out and watched them take the cinema sign down, and the facade kind of came crumbling down that night. But it's amazing how much has happened. Tremendous amount of work has gone into the project. Fundraising, construction, the sign is back, of course, and thankfully, miraculously, nobody was injured that day, but it's been a long rebound, and these people here on the panel today will be the ones to attest to that. In a moment, we'll introduce them, but I want to thank everybody here at the hotel, Ted, Giulian, Mary, their whole team, Chef Jonathan. They're so welcoming to us, and we really appreciate them. Also, thank you to our lead sponsors for these events. They help us make them possible. The Sag Harbor Variety Store, Lisa Field is here with us today. Thank you, Lisa. Attorney John Leonard, who is also here with us today. John, thank you. The Sag Harbor Chamber of Commerce, which is represented with some business leaders here today. Thank you very much. Some of our session leader sponsors also include Sabre Capital. Luke Babcock is here today. Thank you, Luke. BNB Bank, Tara and Seamus are here today. The Washwick Agency, Dayton, Ritz, and Osborne, the Adam Miller Group. Thank you all very much. And also a few more partners we have: Burke and Sullivan Attorneys at Law, JCP Landscaping, Save Sag Harbor, Peak Savers, Fisher's Home Furnishings, the Law Office of Tiffany Scarlato, and the Sag Harbor Inn. Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to thank the folks at LTV. They've been a great partner with us since day one, filming these sessions. They televise them for anybody who couldn't make it, and so they provide our technical support. Thank you, LTV, very much. So I'm going to introduce our panelists with a question. That's the best way we found to do it. We provided the question to them in advance so they can prepare some comments. And then I'm going to turn the microphone over to my partner, Brian Boyhan, and we want to hear from you. So we'll bring the microphone around. Please introduce yourselves and keep your comments brief, whether they're comments or questions, but we will make our way around the room once we've introduced the panel. So on our panel, from left to right, we have Gillian Gordon, the Executive Director of the Sag Harbor Cinema Arts Center. We have Giulia Daniolo Vallan, the Artistic Director of the Cinema Arts Center. Susan Lacy, who's a film producer, director, writer, and a member of the Cinema Board, and it's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Susan. April Gornik, who's the president of the Sag Harbor Cinema Arts Center. Kathleen Mulcahy, our Sag Harbor Village Mayor. And David Brogna, who's the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. He owns an in-home on Main Street, and he's also a tenured professor in the New York State University system. So, Gillian, we're going to start with you, and there's some microphones on the table here. There's 3 different microphones, so if you could just grab it and pass it around. Gillian, as the executive director of the Cinema Arts Center, can you give us an overview of how the Sag Harbor Cinema building project is going and when we can expect an opening date?
I hate that question.
Next week sometime?
Has anybody ever built a house in this room? So we were hoping we would be open before Christmas, but it doesn't look that way, unfortunately. We've had delays, which are, it's a very complex building. And we have acoustical panels that have to be made into a 1/16 of an inch, which we're now waiting on. We have projection equipment, we have sound equipment. We have, in the main cinema alone, we have 32 speakers. So all of these elements, aside from just being a building that needs, to be built, and it is complicated. But anyway, we have a fantastic construction company. They're doing wonderful work. Very soon, everything will be shut down in terms of the walls and the windows and the ceilings, and we're getting all the electrical wiring in. So it actually, as we all walked around this morning, it's really looking like a real building. You know, you can actually walk around in it. And so we're really, really looking forward to the next stage of it, which is really going to be getting the historical touches in. We're going to have these amazing seats, which, you know, the panels, if you remember the panels from the old cinema, we're beautifully painting those and replicating those, and they're going to be installed quite soon. The screens will be coming. We're going to have huge screens. If you can imagine the big old cinema, those of you who know it, we're going to even have a bigger screen than that, even though we now have 2 cinemas. I don't know if everybody's aware of, you know, the fact that we now have 2 cinemas on the ground floor. One is 227 seats, and one is 98 seats. And then when you go up to the second floor, which of course didn't exist before, there's a 40-seater, which is a really lovely, cozy screening room, as well as a place where we can show more niche kinds of films and have master classes. So we're going. It's hard work, and it's very much the hard work of our extraordinary board, who need to get a huge round of applause for doing an extraordinary job of raising the funds for this.
Yes, thank you all. Speaking of the construction, our photographer Michael Heller has been documenting the project, and he's got this very cool picture here of the installation of the spiral staircase this week. Yeah, really impressive work. That looks pretty complicated.
It's going to be a Sunset Boulevard moment.
Yeah. Okay, Giulia, the Sag Harbor Cinema traditionally was an art house theater that focused on independent films. How is the new cinema's programming being curated to appeal to a wider audience in the age of Netflix and other popular streaming services?
Well, the affection and loyalty of an audience is a very precious thing, and a thing that's very hard to conquer. And so I think we're incredibly fortunate to inherit an audience that the cinema had. The cinema had a big history, and it came with an audience to us. At the same time, I know that the incredible support that the community has given to the rebuild goes beyond the original audience. So we need to broaden what they had, and it's very exciting and it's very daunting. But the good news is that the new cinema has been designed from the very beginning, and I was there. We didn't mind the idea to be flexible and to be offering space for more different kind of cinema. Professionally speaking, I come from a very broad idea of programming. I've done very harsh avant-garde and horror. You know, I go and art cinema. So hopefully we will be able to reflect the multiple audiences that are in Sag Harbor and the surrounding areas. You know, we will have, as we said many times, we will have first-run films, you know, like films that come in the theater, and we'll be able to open them. We will embrace a tradition of the great classics and old cinema. I strongly believe in connecting contemporary film to film's history. I think it's important for the audience, and there is a great appreciation for that out here. You know, and we'll be doing documentaries. I mean, we're going to try to do it all. and that's, you know, again, it's the great thing with the way the building has been designed and the technical setup that we have established. In terms of the, you know, you raised the issue of Netflix. It's very true that today most of us can spend a day watching the movies without leaving a room, you know, or you know, everywhere they are. I actually think that film is very resilient. You know, television didn't kill cinema, the home video didn't kill cinema, and I don't think streaming will kill cinema. In fact, I read a study not too long ago that said that people that actually have Netflix and watch Netflix regularly go to the movies more. What's been very rewarding in the little programs we have done so far is to see that there is a desire to come to the movies, you know, and again, you know, we're just starting. but there is a desire to come to the movies. There is a desire to entertain in discussions after the film. Every time that we bring a guest tends to be very successful, and there is an enormous curiosity and great intelligent talks. So I think that the notion to, not to fight, but to complement this sort of incredible amount of content that it's given to us from everywhere, is to curate, to make it a little special. So, you know, our job, my job in particular, will be to try to make the cinema special for all the kind of audiences that want to come, and we hope they will come.
Okay, thank you. Susan, as an award-winning filmmaker and producer, what drew you to be on the cinema board, and what kind of programming are you excited to see be developed here in Sag Harbor?
Well, as a filmmaker, but I'm also an audience member, and I'm one of the maybe 15 people who always went to the Sag Harbor Cinema and enjoyed it, and always knew there would be something there I'd want to see, which you weren't going to see someplace else out here. And so I wanted to get involved in this because I wanted to see that preserved. That, yes, we do want to broaden our programming, of course, but this was the only place out here for a long, long time where one could see foreign films, independent films, and documentaries. So I wanted to be involved because I want to make sure that the cinema continued. It didn't become a bank, and it continued to do that kind of programming. I agree with Giulia that streaming isn't going to kill movie theaters, but they are struggling and they're closing. Many theaters are closing. And I think people really do yearn for the experience of sitting in a room with other people and experiencing a film. And I think I'm really proud that we're part of the fight to keep a movie theater alive in this community. That is an art house film, which will also show, you know, first-run movies and classics and all of that. So I love Giulia's take on it, the programming, and Gillian's, and I'm very attracted to the educational possibilities here in this community with the high schools and expanding that, and I want to keep going to the movies.
All right, thank you. April, while the Sag Harbor Partnership and the Cinema Board have done an unprecedented job in raising funding to date, where's the organization financially when it comes to its opening and the first few years of programming? What kind of support is still needed?
Well, as Gillian brought up, construction is construction. Most of us have been there. You know, I don't know if you build a shed or you build an addition or if you build a house from scratch, but something always goes wrong. And not to complain about that, it's part of the process. And in our case, we realized when we were, Gillian mentioned that the second floor didn't exist. The second floor was always there. It had been the top of an art gallery, and that's where the projection booth. And when we first started, we thought, oh, well, we should add a little onto the very, very top behind the sign, because wouldn't that be cool? And we did. We began there. And then we were like, wait, this project has to be sustainable. And to echo everyone else's remarks about how important it is for the community and making sure that film still has a place in our society, we realized that in order to be truly sustainable, we had to add as much as we could to make this building really fleshed out and give it all the potential that it really deserves. Because it's a remarkable, we have the best community I've ever been in my life. I mean, it's amazing. And you know, the kids here are smart, they're brilliant, they're always getting awards, and the audiences are amazing. So, like, why stop at just rebuilding the shell and sticking a projector and getting a screen? I mean, we could have gone that route. We could have really just rebuilt it as it was, but we consulted with Jacob Burton's Film Center and all sorts of experts, and we had these wonderful connections thanks to our extraordinary board, which has done an amazing job fundraising. But all this to say that we deliberately added on to the cinema and what it could do, because upstairs on what is now the third floor, and it's not the whole extent of the cinema, but what we have there now is we have a VR room that can double as a classroom. which will honor art and technology and cinema and all sorts of potential. We have a lounge area and gathering areas so that kids can come. My fantasy is that high school kids could go and have a safe place to congregate and work on projects, so they could continue their cinema projects that they're working on us with, et cetera, et cetera. So, besides our initial estimate of our construction costs was really right on. Our Conrack Construction has been an incredible company to work with. And they also, Conrack Racanelli did the library, they did the Boulevard Watch case. They're a very fine construction company. And their estimate and what we needed to raise was spot on, and we pretty much nailed that. But we have added on. So we have an additional, like maybe $4 million altogether. And when I'm talking about that amount of money, I'm talking about sustainability. I'm talking about features. You can't imagine, you guys, meetings are so interesting because, somebody goes, but what about the computers? Oh, right. We have to budget for like a myriad of little things that will make the cinema truly functional, and they all add up. But I can tell you that even fundamental things like the fabric-wrapped acoustic panels that are going in every cinema so that we can give people a cinematic experience they probably can't find anywhere but here east of Lincoln Center. We're going to have an amazing, amazing facility, which will be such a point of pride, I think, for this village and for the East End generally. Not just for Sag Harbor, but for the East End generally. But in order to do that, there are like really, really high expenses. Because in the construction, we didn't add all of the, finishing things that we need to do. So I hope that kind of explains why it seems like a lot of money, and no one is sorrier than I that we're not done fundraising for it. But, we're getting closer day by day, and we're hoping that people before the end of October who want to be on the community wall will donate to make sure that their names are there, because now that we're pushing back the opening date, probably is a little more time. We last said October 31st, which is practically next week, 2 weeks. But it might be just a little bit longer, but we do need to start designing this community wall because it's going to be big. It's going to have many names and all different font sizes. So we would love your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about it. What are you doing over there? And we're starting to do walkthroughs too. It's been kind of a dangerous construction site up till now, and still it's a hard hat area. But we really want people to see it. And we have a little something planned that we're not quite ready to announce for later, but we want to invite the community in as soon as we can.
If not today, when, April? This is a perfect opportunity.
You really want our construction manager to just faint dead away, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, thank you. Kathleen, while everyone is excited about the opening of a cinema with deep roots in Sag Harbor history, there will also be challenges with a more popular venue opening in the middle of the village business district. As mayor, what are some of the challenges you see ahead, and how can they be dealt with?
Thanks, Gavin. I just want to echo something that April said. It is a point of pride. That theater is so important to this village, and we are so grateful that you and your committee and your partnership and everybody really stood up and did this, because it is a huge point of pride for Sag Harbor, and Sag Harbor would not be the same without it. So thank you. But yeah, there may be some issues. I hope it is so successful that we have parking issues till we're all blue. That's the best thing that could happen. But we are working together. What's great about April and Susan and Gillian, everyone on the panel, is that we're working together to find some answers. So we're working to find parking solutions for deep summer when 200 extra cars in this village would not be a lot of fun. But it'll be a good problem to have. We should all have, every other village should have these problems. So we're working together. We're looking at a lot of different options. I think at least once a week I have someone come in with a new idea of how to solve it, and we're listening to all of them, and we're checking them all out, and we're working. And there are going to be other problems as well, but I think there's nothing that's not being able to overcome. Construction, we work together, we compromise, we find ways to make it all work, and we'll continue doing that to make it beautiful and wonderful and all positive for the village.
Okay, thank you. A separate conversation we had in East Hampton Village is that it's a ghost town at night. So Kathleen's right that they would love to have the problem of where to put 200 extra people. David, as the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce and a Main Street business owner, in what ways will the opening of the Cinema Arts Center help the overall business community? Could there be any adverse effects?
Okay, so I actually wrote down what I was going to say because I don't remember everything. Well, basically, I didn't look at it as positive or adverse. It's really about benefits, challenges, and opportunities. So first of all, the old cinema was not a participant in the community. I mean, that was a big part of that building being there. It was a dead building in this middle of the village. It stood apart. The new cinema is not the old movie house, but it's a reimagining of what a modern cinema could be. And that's, how we look at it on the block, is what's going on. The benefit is, the first major benefit is the restoration of the visual and iconic identifier. You need that. It's strategic for the business identity and the identity of a village. So that was a very good benefit. The opportunity is for the cinema to become an integral part of the community, not just a destination. That's always the fear. Something opens on the block and it becomes a destination. People just go there and they don't go anywhere else. So to be part of us is really what's the opportunity here. The other side is that most successful villages do host events for the community. And as a Chamber of Commerce, we do everything from Harbor Fest through paying for the Christmas trees during the holiday season. It's all off-season stuff, and that's what we'd be looking for, off-season to make it. Because in season, we don't need to develop much more. I think we're there, okay? So I think the cinema is going to be distinct in its programming, and that's really wonderful. We hope that it becomes a good neighbor, very similar to how Bay Street operates, where they're very complementary to everything that we do in the village. Another benefit is it restores a relatively dead spot on the block and adds a connector for the north-south parts of Main Street. You don't realize that people walk up and stop, and it's been dead, so they walk back. So they don't really make it up beyond that. So that connector has never been there. It's really just been a bus stop for the longest time when you come down to it. The other benefit is the restaurants. The restaurants will truly benefit, and they are very thankful because it's about nightlife and it's about what happens after. So it's dinner and a movie, it's food and a movie. We have 17 restaurants in this village and actually 30 food or eating establishments in total. So we like to eat in this village, it seems. Okay. And drink. That one I don't bring up. Okay. The opportunity is how can we make that spill over into the shops and service businesses that are in the village? That would be the question. Let's see. Next. Okay. The big benefit is that it's going to attract people to the village, but not just the old patrons of the cinema, which, it's funny, like my store's now 23 years old, and we think the people that were 60 or 70 at the time we opened are basically dead. So, okay. So, and if you think about it, though, it needs to attract a new audience. And that new audience, that next generation, one of the hardest things about any community, a business community, is you need that next generation to come. Without that next generation, we're nothing. And one of the things about Sag Harbor is we have worked very hard as a chamber, as businesses in the village, to get that next generation into the village. So this is another venue in which we can get them back in. And I think that's very important here. So the thing is, bottom line is, as a business community, we welcome them. We want you to be a part of the fabric of the community. That's it.
All right, thank you, David. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. You need a microphone, Susan.
Somebody else may have mentioned this already, but I think you're on the right track, David. We did commission an economic impact study, which showed tremendous benefits economically to the town to have the cinema there. So I mean, it's documented. It's not just a hope.
Oh, no, no. You know what? The fear, though, and I'll tell you the fear. You bring in a great deal of economic development, rents go up. And then you start to lose the small town businesses. So it's better to hope that we keep it and you're an addition, right?
No, that makes sense. Makes total sense.
I just wanted to add that, I mean, from the very, very beginning, we all, starting with the partnership and then having been taken over now by the Sag Harbor Cinema Arts Center board, this project was always motivated by the community, because the Sag Harbor Partnership is always about that. And that torch has just been carried on. And we have endless discussions, Gillian and Giulia and I and the cinema board members, about how can we attract young people, how can we attract adolescents, how can we make something available for parents. We were already talking to restaurants about doing dinner and movie nights. That's just kind of a given. And the off season is like when it's the most fun out here, let's face it. So we, for personal reasons, want to make sure that it's a very thriving environment for everybody. So thank you for everything that you said, and we, challenge opportunity and
Well,
the future.
and that's one thing that I will say. Lisa and I met with April and her group when the whole project started. So they've wanted to be a part of it. So that's really great.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn the next portion over to my partner, Brian Boyhan, who's been on Main Street a lot longer than I have, and we want to hear from all of you. Brian?
Hi, folks. So this is your opportunity now. These events are, we really try to gear them for you, our audience, and people who live here. We'd like to start asking questions. Anybody who has a question for anybody on the panel. I've got a couple myself, but I want to hear from you. Who's got their hand up? I see people. Come on. Where's Nada Barry when we need her? Okay, John.
Hi, my name is John Leonard. So my question is, when I stand up, my question is geared towards the people on the cinema board. So I'm very interested in the kind of programming that you're going to bring to the cinema, and I'm also interested to know, in competition with the East Hampton Cinema, which sounds as though they do some of the same things that this cinema is going to do, with the exception of, I would assume, the next Marvel film. What kinds of considerations have you thought about in terms of competing distribution rights and whatnot with that cinema, and how would you differentiate yourself from it?
Thank you.
Well, if you we have to start on the first run because the history of the cinema didn't include those. So it will be, it will be a process. But if you look at the New York Times today, there is about 15 films that come out just today. So I think there is going to be, there is not that there is no material there to play with. I think that there will be a conversation. We will be hiring a booker that is going to help us with the contract to establish ourselves with the biggest distributor to start with. But I think that the cinema, and part of the reason why I geekily fought so much from the beginning to make it a very high tech, is it's not just a vanity thing. It's because you attract better product if the experience is better. I mean, not to badmouth something, but Gillian and I were at the movies in East Hampton last week, and we were looking at the screen, and there were two purple spots on the screen, and it's a tired lamp. The projector lamp is tired, and the chains don't always notice those things. They don't always work on them, and And so the cinema will offer better quality projection, you know, and it's not just again, it's not like in the words. There is a difference the way you experience a film if it's shown properly, if the sound is great. It's just a different. It's a physiological. It's different. So I hope that from the very beginning we'll be able to make you feel the difference between a film in Atmos with a sound system and not, you know, and a film with a great definition and rather than out of focus. So I think that part of that will be by just the kind of venue that we are, you know, and some of it will be the choices, you know, and the choices of the distributor based on our growing history.
Thank you. Susan? Sure.
I think that one of the fundamental differences is that this is a cinema arts center. It is broader than just a movie theater. And that was very intentional so that it could be ongoing programs that, apart from just showing the movies. So I mean, I think it's a really, really big difference because that doesn't exist at the East Hampton Multiplex. I mean, there's a lot. When I was growing up, my mother used to drop my brother and I off at the movies on Saturday because that was the babysitter. And we'd watch the same movie 3 times when my mother did the shopping. One of the things we've talked about is having a children's program on Saturdays. And I know that's something Giulia and Gillian are very interested in. So that it's not just a drop-off point, it becomes an experience. It becomes educational and it's intentional. The possibilities of that in a cinema arts center are enormous. And I think that's really a fundamentally major difference.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that, I mean, UA stepped up to the lack by showing films like Roma and The Favorite, for example, last year, and some of the Academy Award films. And, you know, those are some of the films that we're talking about, I think. But I think the thing that's exciting about having our Cinematheque or our Cinema Center is really that we can bring in extraordinary filmmakers and writers and producers and experts to support our screenings, as well as having retrospectives, so that at the same time as, you know, seeing a fabulous new film, we're also seeing the last film the director made and the first film the director made. And that's where the kind of education fits in, as well as what we're going to be doing, which will be some filmmaking and screenwriting classes as well.
Can I ask you a kind of a follow-up question to that? You've been showing a lot of films at the high school. Now, have you noticed any kind of a bump in getting a younger audience as a result of that? Have you? No?
Well, what do you mean a bump?
I was wondering if you were getting any young people in to
Not
see.
many. No, not many. We had. I mean, we've done different experiments, newer film, older films, you know. But the audience is young people came for the newer films, some of them. But I think, for example, for the high school kids, I was told very clearly that they don't want to stay in school all day, and certainly, no, you know, they don't
Not on
want
a
to.
Sunday afternoon.
They don't want to go back on the weekend. No.
Okay, thank you. Lisa?
So I have a question. We're talking about sustainability and obviously the investment that you're making and making this high tech and appealing to everybody. But with that, obviously, there's a lot of costs involved. And one thing that you'll hear a lot of young families say is they can't afford to take their family to the movie, you know, mother and father and 2 kids, 3 kids. And I believe I remember hearing something about, because of the community preservation fund money, that there was some restriction on price. So how are you going to balance a restriction on price with making it affordable for young families while still being able to afford all of the high quality equipment that, you know, the state-of-the-art equipment that goes into it?
We're going to make tickets affordable. And also we're going to have a membership. So we haven't even launched the whole membership thing. So if you're a member, you're going to get a free matinee for your kids on a Saturday. There are going to be family deals and that kind of thing. So we do want to make it affordable.
I haven't been to the movies. I think an adult movie ticket is anywhere from $12 to $15.
Yeah, so how about 11? I don't know. I mean, we're going to be lower than, we want to be lower than the going rate. And if we're doing something special and bringing in a filmmaker, you know, maybe we'll add a little bit more to it. But we do want to, we really do, this is a community film. This is for everybody, and we want to make it possible. We want families to come. You know, we really do. So we do have to make it affordable. And then hopefully with the kind of membership deals that we have, we'll be able to, you know, we'll have free screenings. People will be able to come, you know, Wednesday evening, you know, Wednesday afternoon for free screenings and things like that. So we're hoping, you know, we can do that. We're not quite there yet, but we'll let you know.
Can I just
Thank you.
say, can I add to that too? I mean, we have to do a little bit of experimenting with this. You're absolutely right. The CPF fund money stipulated that our ticket prices be, I think it's 20% lower than UATC prices. And we're very, very aware of that. We just haven't finalized all of the membership contingencies. But there's no question that we want to get everybody into this theater. And to the point about kids showing up for screenings, they're really hard to get, you know. And if you're used to looking at something on your phone, if you're used to watching a whole movie on your phone, which is really appalling, I think, if you're a filmmaker, the thought of it, but it's going to be a learning experience. So word of mouth, getting a few kids to try it, you know, and seeing what difference it makes. And then the probably the artsy-fartsy smart kids will be more interested in it at the beginning, and then hopefully we'll be able to have things of special interest that kids would like. Like, I'd love to do a Japanese anime film festival at the theater. And this is not like a festival that competes with HIF or anybody else. It would just be like a series of films to introduce people to that. I'd go to that. So there's all sorts of things that are so untapped in this community because nobody's done them. And, you know, they can be really obscure, they can be really familiar, but we're trying to see as three-dimensionally as possible how we can reach everybody. And it's gonna be experimental for a while.
Also, to add to that, we have a room that is dedicated, which is a kind of multi-purpose room, which is education and VR, but it has been designed for VR and for whatever amazing technology that comes along after VR. So the idea is that we're not just looking back, we're also looking to the future. And what we really hope is that on some level, we become an incubator for these new technologies. And if we can get kids excited in what we call immersive storytelling, and that's something that I've done a bit of work on. We become a little Silicon Valley for immersive storytelling. And you know, Tracy knows who's sitting here because theater is immersive storytelling. So there's all sorts of collaborations too that we can do.
Michael?
Mike Hemmer. I'd just like to know whether or not there's been some consideration for local community groups who may want to have an event, like, for instance, the rowing team. I used to row, and maybe they want to have a showing of The Boys in the Boat for their team, you know, and their supporters. You know, is that something that's part of the consideration? Yep.
Not only we want to do that, but like one of the first people that we talked to was Tracy at Bay Street. Like, we'd love to do collaborative things where Tracy would have a show, and it would be a 30s show, and we would have some 30s movies, and the idea of making, especially in the winter, you know, fall, winter, spring, it would be great to have collaborative experiences with all the cultural institutions in the village. It could be Moby Dick and whaling movies and fishing and things and Hemingway and just let your imagination go. So it could be incredibly fun, and all boats would rise. So I'm glad I used the Moby Dick analogy. But like that, and yeah, the rowing team for sure, absolutely. I mean, that's really what we're here for, is to like listen to the community and fill in gaps and give unusual offerings that would be perfect, you know.
Giulia?
And we do have something already upcoming with Tracy at Bay Street on December 10th, and it's a great November. Sorry, it's very close. But at November 10th, and it's a screening of a Blake Edwards film with Julie Andrews, That's Life, and it's followed by a book signing of her new biography, and her and her daughter Emma Walton Hamilton will be there for a Q&A. They will be signing the book. So this, and we're doing this together, and it's thrilling at Bay Street Theater, and it's, as I'm an outsider of this, relative outsider of this community, and it's been incredibly gratifying to see, because we don't have a home, how the other cultural institutions have welcomed us. We have, we don't even have a theater. We already collaborated with Guildhall, with the Southampton Arts Center, with Bay Street now, and with Ross School. The collaboration with Pearson is great and strategic because they were very hospitable, but the idea is also we want to start talking to the kids, and Gillian has already designed a program to start a conversation on a more hands-on camera thing that maybe she can talk about.
Great. Luke?
Hi, Luke Babcock. I have a two-part question. Given that it's a community-supported project and organization, how will you get feedback from the community as to whether the offerings are what the community hopes and likes to see? I mean, there's I think a long time conflict in film, and that what's popular isn't necessarily what's critically acclaimed. So how will you measure whether you're offering the community what it wants? Will it be just seeing what the attendance is, having people vote with their dollars, et cetera? And then the second question related to that is, do you expect at some point to become cash flow break even, or is this always going to be a fundraising feature that's going to have to be followed through every year?
Well, I can't respond to the cash flow break-even thing. The only thing I can say is that there are several all over the country. Local communities have saved movie theaters, and nobody is making a fortune. But there are some of those that are profitable. The great role model is in Westchester, and it's the Jacob Burns Center has become a force of art house, in a big institution. So I don't know if we'll be that big, but hopefully, there is a road to breaking even, I presume. In terms of choosing the films, I don't think personally. I have a long history as a programmer, and I don't go for algorithm. Obviously, you want to please your community. You want to satisfy and offer as many variation of films that people want to see, so I intend the relationship with an audience as a conversation, and so it goes both ways, and we're just going to have to find each other, in this new building.
Anybody else? Ellen, you have a question?
I have a question. As a film student in my former life before I was out here, what are your thoughts about possibly doing some sort of educational, not just for Pearson, which I'm sure you are talking about high school, local schools, but also I would think there's a huge opportunity if you can bring somebody like Susan Lacy in to talk about what she's done as a student of film. I would love to see some of her work and then hear her talk about that. As an adult, I would do it. As a college student, I would have loved it. So are you looking to do some sort of educational work, maybe connecting with NYU or a film school somewhere? And it's a great opportunity, I would think, and also a way to bring in additional income, possibly, if you were doing some sort of educational series that was being, charged.
That's a huge part of it. I don't know if you know this, but I've been a professor of film for the last 12 years, and certainly went to NYU as a film student as well. So I have good, strong connections with educational institutions, and I do feel strongly. I mean, this is one of the things that attracted to me about being here, and we're going to start small, and before the cinemas open, it's hard to do a lot, but we have an opportunity to do all kinds of educational programming, and that might be in a way that I've worked with a lot of refugees and in refugee camps around the world. It may be on a kind of more therapeutic level. There's also education in terms of, higher education, which I'd love to do, but that's a slow grow, and it'll take at least 5 years or so to kind of get there. But we've already started working on filmmaking programs, and also we're looking at doing things like screenwriting, immersive storytelling. Lots of people are interested in learning more about things like post-production. So we'll also be responding on a very practical level to the kinds of things that people would like to learn and like to do here. So there's a kind of pedagogic, kind of high level, and then there's also a very on the ground, I want to learn how to operate that camera. I want to know how to light. I want to know how to make people look beautiful.
Thank you.
Can I wait? Just one thing. I really need to say this because Joe Loro's in our audience, and he's a film historian and has an amazing collection of film posters. And we have this incredible board. It's our cinema board involves people who are truly involved in film. Our advisory board has all these experts. We have a sound person, Academy Award nominated sound person, and Carter Burwell is on the honorary board, and he does movie music, and we have this astonishing array of people in this community that can actually participate in the cinema, and we want to invite them to do that in a very kind of tactile way, so that they actually reach into the community. And it could be talks, it could be all sorts of presentations, it could be real interactions with students. Nigel Noble is a great film editor. I mean, who isn't interested in that? I always go to movies and go, they shouldn't have made that so long. Has anyone else thought that about a movie? So it's like what goes into that? What's the thinking? I would be interested in that, just to make my grouchiness at a too long movie more educated.
Yeah, and can I add to that too? Because we're going to have a kids club, which is really about showing films to kids and introducing them to cinema that hasn't just been made last week. And we'll also have a kind of members club, which will be more looking at a kind of film from a historical perspective. One of the things that we're really excited about doing is working with the Historical Society and showing silent films, and possibly having some music and that kind of thing. So,
David, you had a comment?
I have a question for the board. I know, right? Listening to everything sounds wonderful, but it sounds like you're doing everything. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what's the elevator speech? The tenet is that the customer defines us. That's number one. And 80% of our business comes from 20% of our assortment. So if I were to ask you, what are your top 3 things you're going to be? Because one of the things customers come in and ask is, what's the cinema going to be? And I'm like, well, it's going to be this, it's going to be this, it's going to be this. And we start going down the list, and it's too long a list. So what's the top 3?
What we just said is fleshing out the question about education, obviously. I mean, we've always said education, outreach, and showing the great films that the cinema had always been noted for. Now, in outreach, that involves bringing in people who never have been to the cinema since 1978 because they thought it was too arty-farty. They didn't want to go. I understand that. So how do you make things more fun for everybody? So what we're doing is fleshing out a lot of the things that we're talking about, but make no mistake, if you get in an elevator with me, you will not hear all of this. Or from Gillian.
Eric?
Hi, Eric Cohen. I want to add something to your list that David just said don't do, but what are you going to do? I have to add it. So I know from firsthand in my family experience that one of the biggest challenges for young filmmakers is getting their films shown. Have you given any thought to doing something with showing young filmmakers and local filmmakers especially?
Yes, definitely. In fact, on November 8th, Friday, November 8th at 6 o'clock, we're going to have our first collaboration with the Parish Museum, and it's a program of shorts, of sort of abstract shorts, curated by a young local filmmaker, Micaela Duran. She is Argentinian of origin. She grew up here, and she graduated from NYU, and she's great. Her film is going to be there, but she's also having some visibility in film festivals as a curator. So she picked the films, and she's going to come and introduce them and bring another filmmaker. So very much we want to put the emerging talent that's here in touch with the great famous talent that's here. We want to create a conversation among them. So yes, it's definitely on that. And I've shown a film in Venice this year, the Venice Film Festival this year, which is produced by Julian Schnabel's son, Olmo, and is directed by another young filmmaker. And it's done. Most of the actors are first-timers from Shelter Island. So that's the kind of thing that I'd love to be able to screen here later in 2020.
Thanks, Giulia. Anybody else on this side of the room? On that side of the room? Where? Ah.
Hi, I'm Catherine Manu. Thanks everybody for being here. I wanted to get back to the educational programming. I have 2 young children, and I find living on the South Fork, a lot of the programming that's available to children is really out of reach for a lot of families. It's very expensive, especially filmmaking classes, art classes. So how can the Cinema Art Center offer families of all economic classes access to filmmaking?
Well, I'll say one thing is that when you go, how come you still have to fundraise? That will be one reason. Because, I mean, this did come up, this thing about like, how long is this going to go on for, and are you going to have to keep fundraising? Yeah, Bay Street has to fundraise every year. All not-for-profits have to fundraise every year. We'll have so much better control over what we can do if we remain independent as a not-for-profit. But yeah, we'll need help with that. But absolutely, I mean, sliding scales could be employed. There could be a certain amount of free, offerings. We have not figured this out to the T yet, but absolutely. And I think we're trying to show you in some way that we're trying to establish an open door policy here, where we want to hear what the community wants. We want to know what the needs are. We want to know how we can be helpful to people, and young families with kids that want kids to have offerings, and maybe they want to get to see a movie, and is there something the kids could do while they're seeing? We can't do everything. We can't be a babysitting service, but insofar as it's possible to be really expansive and definitely listen, that will happen.
My favorite was somebody said, "Now, can we go have brunch at the American Hotel and drop the kids off at the cinema?" Can I just let you know, we are applying for grants for this sort of thing, and this, no one has an argument with a museum where you put paintings and sculpture in, and that the state is not paying for that. So I think that what you all understand is that keeping cinemas alive is an urgent situation, and that's what people have responded to. And so we urgently do need to keep education, media literacy at the forefront, and that people aren't going to, the government isn't giving us money for that. The government isn't giving us money for art programs. So we're going to have to go out and raise that money, and we do so gleefully. It's a great pleasure, and we find that people respond really well to that as well.
So speaking of community, what volunteer opportunities are there if you are a community member? What opportunities do you see for people to volunteer for at the cinema?
Well, Hillary is here right now with a clipboard.
Oh, volunteer community organizer.
We need everybody from, are you really good at data entry? You want to collect tickets? Are you a film historian? Are you a filmmaker? You want to teach some filmmaking? We need all the help we can get. We have, we know that in this community there's a huge amount of knowledge and expertise, and we'd appreciate all of it, please.
Also, is there any questions? I mean, am I missing anybody here? Yeah, Michael has a question.
This is a question I think for Giulia, but anybody can answer. How are you facing the monumental task of deciding what will be the very first film shown there?
Good question.
By plotting for showing very many films the same weekend. Well, we haven't really, because we haven't moved the date is not locked yet, so I can't really. Every time I have my eyes on a movie and I said, this will be very good, and then the date shifts, so the movie's gone. But in my dreams, and I haven't discussed it with the board yet, but in my dreams, I imagine an opening that has a lot of offerings, maybe a few days, a week, something, whatever we can afford, whatever we can structure, but that has an abundance of things, so that there is not just like this premiere effect. It's a big opening, there's a party for everyone. That's the way I imagine it, and to offer as many as possibility. If we do have the 35, you'll have a film shown in 35, and if a film show, so and a brand new beautiful movie, something like that. Just sort of a wealth of films. So that's the way I work around the daunting thing of the first.
Can you just quickly just take me through the building? So on the ground floor, 2 theaters, is that right? 100-seat theater? And
There's one that's 227 seats, and there's one that's 98 seats.
And
That's
then-
the ground floor. And then there's a concessions there when you come in. Same entrance, the good old entrance that you all remember. There'll be a little cafe and where you buy your tickets. And then you'll go through, remember that sort of long hall? You're going to go through, and that take you down to the 2 cinemas, which are in essence in the back.
Okay, second floor?
Second floor, there you'll go up some stairs, or you'll take the elevator, and there's a 40-seater, sort of at the front of the building. And then there's a kind of gallery space, and then behind that there's offices and the projection room. And the projection room will operate both of the two screens, 1 and 2, from below.
Okay, and there is a third level, is that right?
Yes, there's a third level. And on the third level, as you come up again in the stairs, there's a terrace that's out front, behind the false front of the cinema. And then there's a kind of open space, which is going to be for workspace, education, meetings, because we have a tiny office about the size of this table. So we'll be working there as well. And hopefully kids will come after school and work. And then we have a VR room, which will also be our education room, and that will be multi-purpose. And then behind that, we have a kind of entertainment, lounge space, cafe, whatever. And that has a terrace off it as well. So it's a really nice room because it's got the windows at the back, and there's actually a view. It's actually an extraordinary view, isn't it?
Nice, very nice. Lisa?
You mentioned, you actually just said cafe on the 3rd floor, but when you're talking about in the very beginning, you also said, I think you said a cafe. Is that something that you're going to be running, or is that something that you're looking to rent out the space to somebody that, a coffee shop or something along those lines?
We're gonna run it with help, and we're gonna be looking to local sources for. We're gonna have a kind of grab and go kind of sandwich thing. It'll be very low key. I mean, it's not there's only about 4 tables, space for about 4 tables, but we're hoping that the various vendors in the community will provide us with the food, and we'll run it. Because it's just like. We need to make a little bit of money that way, as you know. It is about concessions.
And upstairs there'll be the kind of lounge and the work area, and then the rooftop terrace. That'll all be great for being able to rent out. Like, say somebody rents the screening room, and then they want to gather and talk, or maybe they're having a conference or something like that, and they want to rent that space. There'll be a very minimal kind of kitchen. It's not a full kitchen at all. It's more like a catering kitchen with just, things that you can heat up food with. But that way people could use that space. We could rent it out. Again, that's part of the sustainability factor. Without being able to do stuff like that, it's going to be a little hard. We all know that this is a challenging thing. That's why we've tried to make sure that we're designing it in as intelligent and opportunistic a way as possible. Making sure everybody's there, everybody's served, but we have these other options too.
Thank you. April?
Just to be clear, you have 2 cinemas downstairs so that you'll be showing 2 cinemas simultaneously instead of alternating the way the other one did.
Yeah, so we could show, for instance, the 98-seat theater. I think we've all kind of fantasized that would be like a repertory theater. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but for instance, that's where you could do the Japanese anime series or something like that. And then the main theater, if you had a hot first-run movie that like Roma or something like that, that's a really great film and it's first run, everybody's curious about it, you'd have it in the big theater. But we'll be able to switch around. We'll be able to have multiple screenings with each theater every day. So, I'm not a booking expert, but I think once you've got the movie, you can do what you want with it pretty much in terms of hours.
Yeah, and the one upstairs can also be, it's a 48 seats. It used to be, it would be like someone's living room. And these days, the Jacob Burns just opened 2 new screening rooms. They're 50 seats each. So you can have more films, and then you can create more of a habit of people
I think
going to the
I
movies.
think that one's 38, not 48, but it will be like certainly a really nice place to see a movie, and you don't have to rent it. It doesn't have to be like a special thing. It's not going to be a high price situation. It's an extra small theater that we'll have that people can all enjoy. So,
Thanks.
Hi, I was wondering if, with the educational component, if any consideration was given to animation, thinking it's a really great way to bring in community, it can have a journaling kind of aspect to it, and if you had facilities in mind, maybe computers or facilities for cell animation, if that might be part of the plan.
We'd really love to do that, and obviously, initially, it will be about showing films and educating people in terms of and young people particularly in terms of the sort of history of animation, but also it's actually relatively low cost to get the software and have a computer, and certainly I've done work with literally 7-year-olds doing 3D animation, which is just fantastic, but also really simple things like single frame animation, which really is very low tech, but just so creative and fantastic. And I've just, I've managed to work with some incredibly talented people who do that. And I know that we can find them, and people love also, just in terms of asking about, costs of things. I mean, those are the kinds of things that if we run certain kinds of workshops, we can get people to help us and volunteer. And when I was working in London, we Turner gave us funding for all of our software and computers. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll get there.
this is also, I guess, remember that church down the street? That's another possibility that, the church wants to help the cinema, and the cinema wants to, we want to have joint programming. We want to be supportive. So we're all going to keep looking at what kind of space we have available, what the needs are, expand. We're trying to keep the church very flexible so that when there's a need and it seems like a natural need for expansion, maybe I'm not saying that we have this all sorted, but but that is, I'm glad you mentioned that, Gillian, because that is really another expense, providing computers for kids to use to learn 3D animation and the software, not to mention the cost of the software. So, but yeah.
It's the kind of thing, though, I was on the board of the Film Forum and have been involved in this kind of thing before. I often introduce films at the New York Historical Society on Friday nights for their classic film series, and those things are endowed by people. So there's a name that's connected with it, and people recognize that, and I think we have a lot of opportunities for that in this community.
I would agree. And Gavin has a question.
When we talk about the struggling to engage high school kids or college students, I think about the VR component, and can maybe one of you talk about what that programming looks like, if it's just available all the time, and sort of who runs that kind of thing?
It is a sort of, it is right now, it's really complicated. So sometimes some of you may have had the experience, you sit in a chair, you put your goggles on, and you have that experience. There's also, the backpacks, and no strings attached, and that the room is big enough. And I was just looking at it, really funny enough, we were talking about it today. I think we could get about 8 to 10 people. So you can do interactive. So as far as the kids are concerned, they're really interested in doing some interactive game stuff. So there's a possibility of doing that. This is, it's a fascinating area. And also I think one of the things that we're also very interested in is the kind of the artistic application. You probably all know, Laurie Anderson's work, and some of you were lucky enough to see Moon, which was recently at the Hamptons Film Festival in the East Hampton Library. So, there's the kind of more passive experience of VR, and then there's a more active experience of VR. And, we have to get that funded. But what we can also do is what I was saying, talking about immersive storytelling. We can also start thinking about developing these ideas, and start teaching immersive storytelling as well. So it's a complex system that we're talking about.
Is the technology for the VR already funded?
No.
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 No. Here comes the VR fund. Open your wallets.
I had a question for Kathleen, since you haven't had a question yet. As the everyman of Sag Harbor, what is your appetite in film?
Oh, I've missed that theater since the day it burned down. I was there the week before, and really, that to me was a movie experience, going to that theater, because it was a real seat and everything else. It wasn't the plastic that you find at some of the big ones. So it's great. But one thing I'm really worried about, and I haven't heard mentioned, the popcorn machine. We're going to have fresh popcorn, right?
Oh my God, we're gonna have excessively fresh popcorn. we've been talking to Jesse Matsuoka, and he's been advising us. He's just been like the most lovely person, and he was like, and you could have like 25 different flavors of popcorn, and we're like, we don't have room for 25 different flavors of popcorn. We have like lots and lots of popcorn. I think we're going to have crazy excessive popcorn offerings, and all fresh.
Overflowing in the street.
That works.
David, I wanted to get back to you with a question about how the theater, the cinema, and the business community can work together. You talked earlier about you're hoping that there would be a relationship. What is your dream? How would you imagine that the cinema and the business community can work together?
Good question. I mean, one of the things why I asked for the elevator speech is that the shops along Main Street actually become the venue to talk about everything. If you want to know what's going on in the village, come stand behind one of our registers, and you'll hear everything. And you hear everything from positive to negative about this. So that's why I said, what's the elevator speech? Because we need, as a block, to be involved in such a way that we know what to say. And we don't know what to say, because we're saying, well, yeah, it's going to be this. Oh, it's going to be this. Oh, it's going to be this. And that's why I said, what are the top 3 things we would tell people? And I think that's probably the most important thing, because we become the sounding board, whether we want to be or not. You know, you stand in front at Lisa's store, and people going in to pick up their paper, they just start on, what are they doing there? We don't know. And we don't have an answer.
It's so funny, though, because we feel like we're always nattering on about it, like, the cinema this, the cinema that. And people are like, please, stop talking. Of course, you're saying, like, no, nobody gets it. And we're like, how is that possible? But
what are the top 3
no,
things?
You could say
that would be, what are the top 3?
It's going to be, it's going to be a richer movie experience with more screens.
But that doesn't resonate with the customer.
Ooh.
The customer needs 1, 2, 3. This.
What do you think?
Great international
I know, right?
films.
You know, it's not
I
what
teach marketing because
yes, I taught.
Okay,
Yes, I was a
like,
professor in marketing.
You've
So
you've heard what we're saying. What
Right.
do you think our elevator speech should be?
see, I don't
Don't
think.
make this a test, teacher.
No, I know, right? Well, first, I would say you can't lead off with education,
Okay.
because the community wants to know how it's going to benefit them individually.
Okay.
So what are we going to see? And so is it going to be art movies? Is it going to be this? Or what are the specifics of that? That would be the first thing, so that, customer comes into the store and they say, well, what are they going to show? Is it going to be the same as it was? And is that an answer? What do we answer to that?
Well, I thought I tried to answer, but obviously I didn't at the beginning. I think it's going to be a variety of things. It's going to be what it was plus what else a structure like this can offer. So there is going to be more multiple choices. So the way I think I go to the movies is both to forget reality and to learn about it.
Right.
So we should be able to offer both experiences, like films that are informative and documentary, and films that you just go to eat the popcorn and have fun. So we should be able to we will be able to accommodate both.
Okay.
So and to me, it's the cinema is a place to go to experience something with other people, and I think that's why in small towns you have art houses that are being saved, because people want to be together. And when we started talking about this, and it was before the theater burned down, it was 2008, and it was the financial crisis, and ticket sales went up. Why? Because people, first of all, it's not that expensive to go to the movies compared to other things, but people want to be together when things are bad and where things are good. So part of the reason to insert this thing in the middle of May Street is to create a place where people can go, and to forget and to learn. Same, both things.
So I say a movie experience.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what a movie theater is.
No.
But if we
know.
say
Okay.
the three things are, it's going to be more smart, it's going to be more fun, and it's going to be more tasty. Does that sound
Tasty.
good?
Ooh, tasty. I like that.
And it'll smell better.
Well, that's. Well, you know what? My favorite expression was what Paul Goldberger said about the structure when it burned down. He goes, you know what? The only thing really worth anything was the facade, and then it was downhill from that point on.
Can I just say something from all the questions I get asked and what I see on Facebook? I think if you could say, yes, it's still going to be foreign films and art films. Yes, it's going to be new run films. Yes, we're going to have kid films. I think if you could say those three things, people would be happy and it would answer the questions I hear everywhere. And I keep saying, yes, it's going to be those things. It's going to be foreign films and art films. Yes, it's going to be new run films. Yes, there are going to be films for kids. I think those three things would cover, and if you can all say, yes, we're going to do that, then he's got his answer.
If there are no other questions, I think we'll wrap this up. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to pass this back over to Gavin, and you've been great. Thank you.
Yes.